Sometimes the universe works in very unimaginable ways. You are just quiet in your car, and then it throws you into someone else's storm without warning. One moment, you're lost in your own dreams, maybe looking at your future. The next, a stranger's cry tears right through it. That's exactly what happened to Jason that day, when a terrified little girl knocked on his car window and whispered, "My mama's in danger." Before we continue, to our returning viewers, thank you. Your support is what fuels us to bring these powerful stories to life. And if you're new here, we invite you to subscribe. With your help, we'll continue to share stories that inspire, challenge, and move hearts. And if this story touches you, please leave us a comment. Your words mean more than you know. Jason had been driving for hours that afternoon, not toward anywhere in particular, just away from noise. Away from headlines, from people, from the kind of chaos that seemed to follow him even when he didn't invite it. The city around him pulsed with life, but inside his car there was quiet. A steady hum of the engine, the soft rhythm of his own breathing, and a moment's peace he didn't get very often. He stopped at a light near the corner of Ashbury and 12th, one of those little side streets where flower shops sat between old record stores and coffee stalls. The kind of place that still felt human, still had a heartbeat. He was about to take a sip of coffee when he heard it, a sharp knock against his window. At first he thought it was nothing, a bird maybe or someone brushing by, but then it came again, louder, trembling. Jason turned his head. A little girl stood by his door, maybe 6 or 7. Her cheeks were wet, her small hands pressed against the glass, her chest rising and falling too fast. Her lips were shaking as she tried to speak but couldn't. Jason lowered the window slowly. "Hey there," he said, his voice even. "You all right?" She took a step closer, breath catching in her throat. "Please," she said, voice cracking. "You gotta help my mama, they're hurting her." The words hit him harder than any punch could. He immediately opened the door and crouched to her level. "Slow down," he said gently. "Who's hurting her? Where?" She pointed down the street, toward a narrow alley wedged between 2 old brick buildings. "2 men," she stammered. "They were yelling at her behind the store. I screamed, but nobody came." Jason followed her finger with his eyes. The alley was half in shadow, half lit by a flickering streetlight. He could hear faint voices, distant, sharp, angry. He looked back at the girl. Her knees were shaking. Her name tag from school still clung to her shirt. Emily. "Okay, Emily," he said softly. "I want you to stay right here, okay? Don't move, don't follow me. Can you do that?" She nodded, clutching her small fists to her chest. "Please don't let them hurt her." Jason's jaw set. "They won't." He closed the car door gently and started walking. His pace was slow, controlled, but his body carried that quiet tension, that calm before a storm. The alley smelled of stale air and garbage, but beneath that there was something sharper, fear. Halfway down he saw them. 2 men, both in work jackets, their voices echoing off the walls. One was blocking the woman's path, the other going through her purse, tossing things aside like her life meant nothing. The woman, Emily's mother, looked exhausted. Her hair was loose, her uniform stained from the long day at the diner. She was shaking, clutching her side, her eyes darting toward the street like she was praying for someone to come. "Come on, sweetheart," one of the men sneered. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. We just want to talk." "Talk," the other one laughed. "You think she's got anything worth taking?" Jason's voice came from behind them, low, steady, and ice cold. "Let her go." Both men froze. The taller one turned, half annoyed, half amused. "Who the hell are you?" Jason stepped closer, his eyes locked on them. "The guy who told you to walk away." The other laughed, gesturing to his friend. "Look at this one, thinks he's in some kind of movie." Jason tilted his head slightly. "No, I just hate bullies." That sentence hit like a challenge. The taller man's smirk dropped. He reached into his jacket, maybe for a weapon, maybe for courage. Either way, Jason didn't give him time. He moved fast, 1 step forward, one hand grabbing the man's wrist, twisting it sharply. The man yelped, his knees buckling as Jason spun him around and slammed him against the brick wall. The second one lunged in, shouting something, but Jason ducked low, drove his shoulder into the man's stomach, and sent him crashing to the ground. The sound echoed through the narrow alley. Both men groaned, clutching their sides. Jason stood over them, breathing steady, his jaw tight. He crouched beside the first one. "You picked the wrong street," he said quietly, "and the wrong woman." The man tried to glare up at him, but Jason's eyes didn't leave his, sharp, cold, and final. "If I ever see you here again," Jason added, "you won't walk away next time." The man swallowed hard, nodding quickly. Jason straightened, turning toward the woman. "You all right?" She hesitated, still shaking. "I think so." Jason offered his hand, helping her up. "Your daughter's waiting by my car." Her eyes widened, disbelief and relief all at once. "Emily." He nodded. "She's safe, scared but safe." The woman's knees almost gave out, but Jason steadied her. "Take a breath," he said. "It's over now." She blinked, tears welling in her eyes. "Who are you?" Jason gave a faint half-smile. "Just someone who was passing by." He guided her out of the alley, keeping a watchful eye behind him. The two men were still on the ground, one muttering curses under his breath, the other too winded to move. Jason didn't care. He'd already decided if they followed, they wouldn't get a second warning. When they stepped back onto the street, Emily was standing by the car, holding Jason's door handle like it was the only solid thing in the world. The moment she saw her mother, she ran forward, sobbing, "Mama." Her mother dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around her tight. "I'm here, baby. I'm okay." Jason stopped a few feet away, letting them have that moment. He looked down the street, scanning for any movement, then turned back toward them. The mother looked up, her face streaked with tears. "I don't even know how to thank you." Jason shook his head. "You don't need to, just get home safe." Emily wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Are you a policeman?" she asked softly. Jason smiled faintly. "No, sweetheart, just someone who doesn't like seeing people get hurt." She smiled weakly, still clutching her mother's hand. As they walked away, Jason leaned against the car for a moment, watching them disappear into the fading light. He didn't notice the teenager across the street holding up a phone, recording the whole thing. Within an hour, the video was online, titled simply, "Man Saves Woman and Her Daughter from Attackers." By nightfall, it had been shared 100,000 times. Jason drove a few blocks away and parked near the edge of town. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by that familiar quiet again. He sat there for a while, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. He didn't think of himself as a hero, never had. He just didn't like standing by. After a few minutes, he pulled out his phone. Missed calls, a text from an old friend, news notifications already popping up about a mystery man who stepped in to protect a stranger. He sighed, so much for quiet. A knock on the glass startled him again, softer this time. It was Emily, her mother, standing behind her. They must have followed the direction of his car before. Jason rolled the window down. Emily held up something small in her hand, a single daisy, its stem slightly bent. "It's for you," she said. Jason blinked, surprised. "For me?" She nodded. "Mama says you helped us because you're kind. I think it's because you're brave." He took the flower carefully, holding it between his fingers. "Well," he said with a faint smile, "I'll take either." Her mother stepped forward, her voice soft. "You didn't have to get involved, but you did. That means something." Jason met her eyes, calm, steady. "It should mean nothing. It should just be what people do." She looked down, then nodded slowly. He glanced at Emily again. "You look after your mama, all right?" Emily smiled. "I will." He watched them walk away one last time, the little girl's hand swinging her mother's, her laughter echoing faintly. Jason looked at the flower in his hand, simple, fragile, and placed it on the dashboard. Sometimes, he thought, the world doesn't need saving. It just needs someone to care enough to stop the car. The next morning came with a haze of orange sunlight and the soft hum of a city already awake. Jason sat by the small motel window, sipping black coffee, the same daisy from the night before lying on the table beside him. He hadn't slept much. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first he ignored it, but when the noise didn't stop, he finally picked it up and froze. Every major outlet, every social page, every feed was showing the same clip: him, the alley, the two men, the rescue. Someone had added music, slow and cinematic, turning it into a story of a real-life hero stepping in where others turned away. The caption read, "If everyone had his courage, the world would look different." Jason leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. "Great," he muttered. "Exactly what I needed." But it wasn't just news now, it was personal. Thousands of comments flooded the post. Jasonstatham is a legend even off-screen. If that's really him, this just made my day. Proof that good men still exist. Only thing was, he hadn't told anyone his name, not even the woman he helped. Someone else must have recognized him. Across town, Emily and her mother were sitting in a small breakfast diner. Emily had the video pulled up on her mother's phone, watching it for the 10th time. "That's you," Emily said, pointing at the screen, grinning from ear to ear. "That's him helping you." Her mother smiled weakly. "Yeah, that's him." She hadn't slept either. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that alley again. The fear, the voices, and then the calmness in his eyes when everything else was chaos. She looked out the window and whispered to herself, "I hope he's okay." Jason drove out of town later that day, hoping to disappear before the attention got worse. He'd been through this before, not the fame, but the noise that came after. The endless talking, people trying to turn a simple act of decency into a headline. He wasn't doing it for applause, he never had. By midday, he found himself in a quieter part of the city, an old repair garage he'd used years ago. The owner, Frank, an old friend, looked up as Jason stepped through the door. "Look who the wind dragged in," Frank said with a laugh. "Or should I say the internet?" Jason sighed. "So you've seen it too." "Jason, the whole damn world's seen it. My niece sent me the clip before I even had my coffee." He smirked, but then his face softened. "You did good, mate." Jason shook his head. "I did what anyone should have done." Frank leaned on the counter, giving him that look, half respect, half concern. "Yeah, but not everyone does, Jason." Jason didn't answer. He looked out the garage door at the street, sunlight spilling over parked cars, people passing by with their phones out, faces glued to screens. Frank chuckled. "You're trending in 12 countries, you know that. They're calling you the Silent Guardian." Jason rolled his eyes. "Catchy." "Could be worse. They could have called you Bald Avenger." Jason couldn't help but smirk at that one. But the laughter didn't last long. Because just as Frank turned to grab a wrench, Jason's eyes caught movement outside, two men standing near the curb. One of them had a bruise on his jaw. Jason recognized him instantly. The taller one from the alley. They weren't here for small talk. Jason walked out slowly, his steps deliberate. The men straightened when they saw him. "Didn't expect to see you again," Jason said quietly. The taller one smirked, though the fear in his eyes gave him away. "You made us famous, old man. Do you know how many people saw that video? You think we're just gonna let that slide?" Jason crossed his arms. "You embarrassed yourselves, that's on you." The second man stepped forward. "You think you can humiliate us and walk away?" Jason's expression didn't change. "I already did." The man lunged and Jason sidestepped, catching his arm, twisting it just enough to make him drop to one knee. The taller one swung next, but Jason ducked, drove his elbow into the man's ribs and sent him sprawling onto the hood of a car. Frank came running from inside, shouting, "Jason, you want me to call the cops?" Jason's eyes didn't leave the men. "No need, they've learned enough." The men scrambled up, panting, glaring at him. "You'll regret this," one spat before limping off. Jason watched them go, his jaw tightening. Frank walked over, shaking his head. "You really attract trouble like a magnet, don't you?" Jason exhaled slowly. "I didn't ask for this." "No," Frank said quietly, "but the world noticed. Maybe that's not such a bad thing." That evening, Jason drove to the city's outskirts again, trying to outrun the noise. But when he stopped at a small roadside cafe, something unexpected happened. As he stepped out of his car, he saw a group of people gathered outside, watching something on a large outdoor screen. The viral video again. But this time, it wasn't just the clip. Someone had edited together stories, other strangers who had stepped in to help people since seeing Jason's act. A man pulling a woman from a crashed car. A teenager standing up to bullies at school. A store clerk defending an elderly customer from thieves. The caption on the screen read, "One man's courage started something bigger." Jason stood still, watching in silence as people clapped and smiled at the stories playing before them. He wasn't used to this, to being looked at, to being admired. But as he stood there, he realized something simple. Maybe this wasn't about him anymore. Maybe it never was. He turned to leave quietly, not wanting attention, but a familiar voice called out behind him. "Jason." He froze, turned around. It was Emily, holding her mother's hand. She ran to him, smiling wide. "You're here." Her mother approached, that same warmth in her eyes. "We saw the news. I was hoping we'd find you again." Jason smiled softly. "Guess I'm not that hard to find anymore." Emily tugged on his sleeve. "Everyone's talking about you. You're famous now." Jason knelt down, looking her in the eyes. "You know what's better than being famous?" She tilted her head. "What?" "Doing the right thing, even when nobody's watching." She smiled, nodding slowly, the words settling into her heart. Her mother touched his shoulder. "You didn't just help us, Jason. You reminded people that there's still good left in the world." Jason looked away for a moment, not out of pride, but humility. Maybe the world just needed a reminder. The crowd nearby started cheering again at the screen, clapping for the stranger's stories that followed his. For the first time in a long while, Jason allowed himself to smile, not because he was proud, but because something good had finally come out of something ugly. He stood, giving Emily's hair a gentle ruffle. "Take care of your mom, all right?" "I will," she said brightly. As he walked back to his car, Emily called after him, "Jason." He turned. She waved the small daisy he'd given back to her earlier, now tucked in her hair. "See, still got it." Jason grinned. "Looks better on you, kid." He got into his car, started the engine, and looked at the rearview mirror. Emily and her mother waving as the cafe lights glowed behind them. The world outside still had its darkness, but in that moment it felt lighter. And for Jason, that was enough. He drove off quietly, leaving behind the noise, the fame, the flashing cameras, but also leaving behind a spark that had already caught fire in people's hearts everywhere. Because sometimes, a single act of courage doesn't just save one person. It changes the world, one knock on a window at a time.